He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be.
Okay, let's unpack this. That feeling when you're facing a really big exam, you really want to feel like you're on solid ground, ready to go. The NCE, the National Counselor Examination, that definitely fits the bill. It's totally understandable for it to bring up some nerves, right?
Yeah.
Even when you're putting in the work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So think of this deep dive as like a proactive step in your preparation journey. We're aiming to build up that feeling of confidence and readiness.
Yeah, we definitely recognize that tackling a significant exam like the NCE can create pressure. So our goal here is really to offer a resource that, not only provides information, but also helps ease some of that tension through understanding and maybe through the support of a community too.
And this particular deep dive, it's especially for Lily. She's a member of our NCE study group.
Oh, great.
Lily specifically asked for this focus. She might not be taking the NCE like tomorrow, but she's already thinking ahead about managing any potential anxiety, which is honestly really smart.
Yeah.
The kind of preparation, Lily, that'll serve you so well.
It really is a commendable approach that Lily's taking. So this deep dive, it'll serve as an introduction to a valuable resource specifically designed to support your preparation for the National Counselor Examination.
Right.
We'll be exploring the origins of this study guide, the person behind it, and how you, just like Lily, can connect with the supportive community. And we'll also be exploring the foundational ideas of Carl Jung. He's a truly influential figure in psychology, and his insights can significantly enrich your understanding as you prepare for the NCE.
Exactly. And the resource we're diving into today, it's called NCE Jump. It's a study guide specifically created for NCE prep. And everything we're discussing today comes directly from this guide.
So our aim for this deep dive is kind of twofold. Give you a solid understanding of the study resource, and also introduce you to some core psychological concepts from Carl Jung that can be, incredibly valuable as you get ready for the NCE. We want to present this in a way that's, clear, accessible, and hopefully kind of spark some interest too.
Right. And to begin, each module of the NCE study guide actually starts with a pretty thought-provoking quote. He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be. This powerful statement comes from the work of Carl Jung.
Okay, let's just take a moment with that. He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be. What initial thoughts? What ideas does that bring up for you?
Well, interestingly, the quote immediately makes me think of the persona concept, that social mask we all kind of present to the world.
We navigate various social situations by adopting certain roles, and there's a potential danger in mistaking that outward presentation for our authentic self.
Right. It's almost like we so involved in playing a part that we lose sight of who we really are underneath it all.
Precisely. Yeah. And it also raises a really compelling question about the influence of the unconscious. To what extent are we consciously controlling the image we project? Or are there maybe deeper unseen aspects of ourselves shaping how we appear? It makes you consider if our outward presentation always lines up with our inner reality.
That's a really good point. And it also speaks to that idea of confusing the roles we play in life, like student, parent, employee, with our fundamental identity. You might be a student now, but that's just one part of who you are as a whole person.
Exactly. Yeah. And on maybe a more profound level, this quote could even be seen as an invitation to explore those less visible aspects of ourselves, what Jung called the shadow, the parts we might not readily acknowledge, even to ourselves.
It definitely gives you something to think about. And as you prepare for your future role as a counselor, it feels like a really valuable starting point for self-reflection.
It truly does. It encourages a level of self-awareness that is just so essential in the helping professions. Understanding that potential gap between appearance and reality, both in ourselves and, in those we'll be working with, that's fundamental.
So just a quick reminder again, this deep dive is especially dedicated to Lily as she proactively gets ready for the NCE. And the material we're exploring comes from the NCE Study Guide. Now, this guide is pretty unique. It's a volunteer-based community resource, specifically designed to support NCE preparation. It really focuses on the types of scenarios you'll likely encounter on the exam, like how a counselor might respond to different client situations, ethical decision-making, understanding theoretical approaches, developing treatment plans, that sort of thing.
And what's particularly valuable here, I think, is the community-driven nature of this resource. It's not just some static document. It's more like a dynamic tool that evolves through the engagement of people who are all on a similar path toward the NCE.
Yeah, exactly. And the person who brought this all together is Glenn Ostland. He actually recently took and passed the NCE himself.
Oh, wow. Recent experience.
Yeah, so he has firsthand experience with the whole process. Glenn also holds master's degrees in both folklore and clinical mental health counseling, which is a fascinating mix, right?
That is an interesting combination. Folklore and counseling.
Yeah. And during his time in graduate school at Indiana University, he spent over 6 years teaching college classes. So he has a real knack for structuring educational content in ways that are both engaging and, easy to grasp.
That background offers a really interesting blend of skills, just perfect for creating a study resource like this. The understanding of human stories and experiences from folklore combined with the clinical expertise. It provides a really well-rounded perspective. And yeah, 6 years of teaching that undoubtedly honed his ability to present complex stuff clearly.
Absolutely. And before his work in counseling, Glenn also spent a significant amount of time, like 13 years in the healthcare industry. He's also traveled extensively, lived in Japan for 5.5 years, explored cultures across Asia, Europe, South America. That kind of international exposure must give you a really broad understanding of human nature and different perspectives.
Yeah, I would think so. That expensive international experience likely shaped his understanding of both the universal aspects of, the human experience and the crucial importance of cultural sensitivity. In counseling, that kind of nuanced awareness is truly invaluable.
Glenn's diverse background, especially understanding different cultural narratives from his folklore studies, probably informs how the NCE Jung Guide approaches the universality and, the cultural variations within psychological theories.
Makes sense.
He actually has these 3 core values that really guide his work. First is curiosity, this genuine desire to explore and understand the deeper patterns underlying human experience.
Okay.
Second is integrity, that commitment to aligning your beliefs, feelings, actions in a way that promotes truth and growth. And third is connection person, the belief that meaningful growth happens through relationships, whether that's on a neurological level or just in our interactions.
Interesting. And those values, they seem to kind of permeate the study guide itself, don't they? The curiosity probably fuels the deep dives into topics, the integrity ensures a thoughtful, ethical approach, and the emphasis on connection is right there in the community aspect of the study group.
Totally. And Glenn has this really creative way of describing his process for developing the study guide. He calls it an AI puppet show.
An AI puppet show. Okay, tell me more.
Right. So essentially, he uses ChatGPT to delve really deeply into psychological theory, research, ethical frameworks. He organizes all that info into detailed Google Docs, and then uses another AI tool called Notebook LM to synthesize the content and kind of examine it from various viewpoints.
Huh. That raises an interesting point about AI and learning, but what's noteworthy here is Glenn's really transparent approach to it. It's not about replacing human insight, right? Yeah. It's more like using AI as a tool to thoroughly explore and synthesize information, almost like having a virtual study partner that can offer different perspectives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the result, he says, is this learning experience that's driven by dialogue and rich in insights. It really mirrors the kind of critical thinking and adaptability you need for the NCE and, for the actual practice of counseling. It's not just about memorizing facts, it's about actively engaging with the material.
That makes a lot of sense.
So what was it about Carl Jung's work specifically that Glenn felt was particularly valuable for NCE prep? What led him to create this specific guide focused on Jung?
That's a great question. I think Glenn likely recognized the profound influence of Jung's ideas on various counseling theories and just how we understand the human psyche. Jung's concepts offer a deeper understanding of motivations, behaviors, the journey of personal growth, all of which are relevant to the scenarios and theoretical frameworks you'll bump into on the NCE.
Okay. Now, if you'd like to delve deeper into these topics and maybe connect with others who are also preparing for the NCE, Glenn hosts a 1-hour weekly study group. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it's open to anyone who wants to join, connect, ask questions. So whether you're actively studying or just want some background listening, or maybe you're looking to connect with others on a similar path, you're very welcome to participate.
And what's particularly beneficial there is that opportunity for live interaction, being able to ask questions in real time. That kind of community support can be incredibly valuable when you're gearing up for a challenging exam like the NCE.
Totally. If you're interested in joining the study group, Or even if you want to suggest a topic for a future discussion, you can just send an email to nceststudyguide@gmail.com. That's nceststudyguide@gmail.com.
Got it.
And just for fun, for those who enjoy this kind of personal detail, Glenn also shares his astrological signs. He's an Aquarius sun, Aquarius rising, and Cancer moon.
Ah, okay.
He identifies as a 7 on the Enneagram and an INFJ on the Myers-Briggs. Make it out what you will.
It's interesting how people find different frameworks, isn't it, for understanding personality and motivations. Whether you find value in astrology or personality assessments, it can offer another lens, another way to understand ourselves and others.
Definitely. All right, so now we're going to transition a bit and start exploring the work of Carl Jung, who, as we heard with that opening quote, is a truly foundational and influential figure in psychology.
Absolutely. Yeah, getting an understanding of some of Jung's core concepts can provide a much richer context for many areas of counseling theory and practice that, you'll encounter on the NCE.
Okay, so Section 1 of the NCE Jung Guide gives us an overview of Carl Jung's life and his theoretical positioning. Carl Gustav Jung, he lived from 1875 to 1961. Swiss psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, his work really laid the groundwork for what's called analytical psychology.
Right, which is its own distinct school of thought, separate from Freud's psychoanalysis.
Exactly. Jung's contributions are just vast. They touch on mythology, philosophy, religion, art. He's definitely one of the most influential thinkers in what we call depth psychology.
And what's particularly striking is just the breadth of his intellectual curiosity. Jung didn't limit himself to just the clinical side of psychiatry. He drew from this huge range of human knowledge and experience to develop his theories.
He was born in Switzerland, and his family had these strong ties to both religion and academia. His father was a pastor, so Jung was exposed really early on to theological discussions, metaphysical ideas, even mysticism. He initially studied medicine, then specialized in psychiatry at the University of Basel. And his early work in psychiatric hospitals actually introduced him to the unconscious mind through his observations of patients experiencing psychosis.
Yeah, that early immersion in the more, let's say, extreme expressions of the human psyche likely had a profound impact on how his theories about the unconscious developed. It gave him this firsthand perspective on the power and complexity of the inner world.
Now, Jung's early work, his research using word association tests, he's identified the unconscious, it caught the attention of Sigmund Freud.
Right, the big name.
Yeah. Around 1907, the two began this really intense collaboration. Initially, there was a strong intellectual, even personal connection. Freud actually saw Jung as a protege, someone who could potentially help bring greater legitimacy to psychoanalysis within the scientific community, partly because Jung had this respected academic background, and his European identity might have helped counter some of the controversy around Freud's background and ideas at the time.
And what's important to recognize here is that Freud really saw Jung as his intellectual successor, the heir apparent almost, someone who could carry forward the legacy of psychoanalysis. Jung even became the first president of the International Psychoanalytical Association, which really highlights the significant role he initially played within that whole movement.
But, as often happens in these close intellectual partnerships, disagreements started to bubble up. Jung began to have differing views on Freud's really strong emphasis on sexuality as the primary driver behind human behavior. While Freud primarily saw the unconscious as this repository for repressed desires and traumas, Jung had a much broader vision, one that included collective, even spiritual dimensions.
And this is a really critical point of divergence between their theories, isn't it? Jung felt that Freud's focus was just too narrow. It didn't fully account for the whole spectrum of human motivation and experience. Jung believed there were other fundamental drives and influences beyond just the psychosexual.
So by 1913, these fundamental disagreements led to a formal break between Jung and Freud. And this marked the beginning of a very intense period of self-reflection for Jung. He later called it his confrontation with the unconscious.
Right, the Red Book period.
Exactly. During this time, he kept these incredibly detailed journals, eventually compiled into the Red Book, where he documented his dreams, visions, even dialogues with archetypal figures. This period of inner exploration really laid the foundation for many of his core theories, like the collective unconscious and archetypes.
And what's fascinating is that Jung's most original and impactful contributions to psychology truly emerged from this period of deep personal exploration after the split with Freud. It was a time of significant personal and professional upheaval, sure, but it ultimately led to the development of his unique school, analytical psychology.
Yeah, the separation from Freud wasn't just about intellectual differences. It was deeply personal. It had significant professional ramifications for Jung. He lost friendships, his standing in many psychoanalytic circles was affected, and he went through a period of considerable psychological distress. But, as we've discussed, this rupture also marked the true beginning of his most original and lasting contributions to psychology.
It really underscores the idea that significant intellectual and personal growth can sometimes emerge from periods of challenge and disagreement. Jung's willingness to follow his own path, even when it meant diverging from such a major figure like Freud, ultimately enriched the field of psychology in really profound ways.
All right, so that brings us nicely to section 2, which gets into some of the key Jungian concepts. One of Jung's most groundbreaking ideas was this concept of the collective unconscious. Could you maybe elaborate on that for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, the collective unconscious, as Jung theorized it, is this layer of the unconscious mind that is, well, universal, shared by all human beings. It's distinct from the personal unconscious, which holds our own individual forgotten memories and repressed experiences.
Okay.
Instead, the collective unconscious contains these universal patterns and symbols known as archetypes. Think of archetypes like recurring characters or themes you see across countless stories and myths. The wise old man, the hero's journey, the nurturing mother figure. These aren't literal people, but rather universal patterns of human experience.
So it's kind of like we're all born with this shared underlying blueprint of human experience. Is that a fair way to put it?
Precisely. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. And this idea helps explain why we see recurring themes in mythology, religion, art, across so many different civilizations that had no direct contact. It also shifts how we think about the therapeutic process, suggesting that personal healing can often be connected to these larger transpersonal patterns.
That's a really interesting way to frame it. And you mentioned archetypes. What exactly are those in Jungian psychology?
So, archetypes, in Jung's view, are these innate universal symbols or motifs that reside within that collective unconscious. He believed they manifest in our dreams, our myths, our religions, our stories. And while there could be, theoretically, an infinite number of archetypes, Jung identified some that are particularly central to his psychology.
Okay, like what? What are some of the key ones?
Well, one important one is the persona. This is the social mask we wear, right? As we navigate different social roles and expectations, it's how we present ourselves to the world. And while it's a necessary aspect of social interaction, over-identifying with the persona can lead to a feeling of inauthenticity, of not truly being ourselves. That kind of resonates with the challenges maybe students face, presenting a confident facade even when feeling uncertain. How might an over-reliance on the student persona hinder genuine learning?
Oh, that's a great question. It could definitely prevent you from acknowledging areas where you need more understanding, right?
Yeah.
You might be hesitant to ask obvious questions if you're too attached to appearing knowledgeable all the time.
Exactly. Then there's the shadow. This represents the repressed, often unconscious aspects of ourselves, those traits we tend to disown or see as unacceptable, both to ourselves and maybe to society.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, the shadow can contain both negative and positive qualities that we haven't integrated. And often we see our own shadow reflected in others through projection. Understanding your own potential for shadow projection is just crucial for a counselor. On the NCE, you might see scenarios testing your ability to remain objective when a client exhibits behaviors that trigger a strong negative reaction in you. Recognizing your own shadow can help you avoid misinterpreting the client's experience through your own unconscious biases. I remember early in my training, I found myself getting really critical of a supervisor's direct style, and it took some self-reflection to realize I was actually uncomfortable with my own assertiveness.
Wow. So if someone really irritates me with a certain trait, it might actually be something I'm not acknowledging in myself. Is that the idea?
That's a classic example of shadow projection, yeah. Another important pair of archetypes are the anima and the animus. The anima is the inner feminine side that exists in men, and the animus is the inner masculine side that exists in women.
Okay.
Now, these aren't about physical gender, but more about the balance of different kinds of energies within us. Jung saw integrating these aspects as crucial for psychological wholeness.
So it's about finding a balance between, say, rationality and emotion, or maybe assertiveness and receptivity, regardless of your gender.
Precisely, yeah. And finally, there's the self. This is considered the archetype of wholeness. It represents the ultimate integration of all the different parts of our psyche. Achieving the self is the main goal of what Jung called the individuation process.
Okay, so we've got the persona, the shadow, the anima and animus, and the self. And you just mentioned individuation. What is that exactly?
Right. Individuation. In Jungian psychology, it's the lifelong process of integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of our psyche. It's a journey, really. It involves facing and understanding our shadow, bringing balance to our anima and animus, and ultimately moving toward that sense of wholeness represented by the self.
So it's not just about, like, fixing problems or getting rid of symptoms then?
No, not primarily in the Jungian sense. It's a much more profound journey of self-discovery and integration. Jung actually saw it as quite different from Freud's idea of maturation, which he believed largely finished up in adolescence. For Jung, adulthood, and especially midlife, were often key periods for this kind of deep transformation, often marked by existential questions and a search for deeper meaning.
That really resonates with a lot of what we see in counseling, doesn't it? That search for meaning and purpose, especially as people move through different life stages.
Exactly. And the concept of individuation is really central to depth-oriented and transpersonal counseling models. It encourages clients to look beyond just symptom relief and to really move towards a deeper sense of self-realization and wholeness.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so moving on to section 3. How did Jung's ideas actually influence later counseling theories?
Well, Jung's influence is pretty significant, although sometimes it's a bit indirect. When we compare his work with traditional psychoanalysis and other psychodynamic models, some key differences really stand out.
Right.
As we touched on earlier, Freud's model tends to be more deterministic, more rooted in biological drives, particularly sex and aggression. Jung's framework, on the other hand, is more symbolic, spiritual, and really focused on personal growth.
And he didn't put as much emphasis on early childhood experiences as Freud did, right? I remember you mentioning that.
That's correct, yeah. While Jung acknowledged the importance of early experiences, he placed a greater emphasis on archetypal patterns, the challenges and opportunities of midlife, and that ongoing quest for meaning throughout life. This broader perspective actually allowed Jungian theory to align more closely with later existential and humanistic orientations in counseling.
So you can really see him as sort of a bridge between those more traditional psychodynamic approaches and the later focus on human potential and meaning.
Absolutely. Jung is often considered a key precursor to transpersonal psychology, which really focuses on spiritual development and what are sometimes called transcendent experiences. His work laid the groundwork for influential figures like Abraham Maslow and Stanislav Grof, who incorporated ideas about higher states of consciousness into their therapeutic models.
So his emphasis on inner transformation and spiritual symbolism really resonated with that later transpersonal movement then.
Precisely. Jung's focus on archetypal meaning and that innate drive towards wholeness aligns very well with the goals of both transpersonal and humanistic counseling, which often center on self-actualization and personal growth.
And dream work. That was a really important part of Jung's approach, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, definitely. Dream interpretation is really a cornerstone of Jungian therapy. Jung saw dreams as incredibly important messages coming from the unconscious, just rich with archetypal meaning. And his approach to dreams was quite different from Freud's. While Freud often analyzed dreams in terms of wish fulfillment and repressed sexuality, Jung saw them as more compensatory, meaning they often balance out our conscious attitudes and reveal aspects of ourselves that we might be neglecting.
Compensatory.
Yeah. So, for example, if someone is consciously very focused on their career, a Jungian perspective might suggest their dreams could be exploring their need for more personal connection or creativity. In such a dream, you might see symbols of relationships or artistic expression appearing prominently.
So it's not just about hidden desires, but maybe more about a kind of inner wisdom trying to come through.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. Dream work in Jungian counseling often involves exploring the dreamer's personal associations with the dream images, sure, but also looking at the broader symbolic elements and even making connections to cultural or mythological themes. And Jung also developed this technique called active imagination.
Active imagination.
Yeah, as another way to consciously engage with images and symbols from dreams or fantasy. It can be a really powerful tool for integrating unconscious material.
Huh. That sounds like a very different way of working with the unconscious than just, say, free association.
It is, yeah. It's a more active and imaginative engagement with the inner world aimed at fostering that integration and movement towards wholeness that is just so central to Jung's vision of psychological development.
Okay, wow. This has been a really, really helpful overview of Jungian concepts. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit and do a quick quiz to help reinforce some of these ideas. We've got 10 questions lined up for you.
That's right. This is a chance to test your understanding of the key concepts we've discussed in sections 1 through 3. So for each question, we'll read the question, present all the multiple choice options, restate the question, and then provide the correct answer with an explanation. Ready?
Ready. All right, let's dive into the quiz. Question number 1. What is the key difference between Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious and Sigmund Freud's concept of the unconscious mind? A. Freud's unconscious is primarily focused on inherited archetypes, while Jung's is focused on repressed personal experiences. B. Jung's collective unconscious is a universal layer of the psyche containing archetypes, while Freud's unconscious is mainly a repository of repressed personal desires and traumas. C. Freud believed the unconscious was largely inaccessible, while Jung believed it could be easily accessed through dream analysis. D. Jung's unconscious included only negative aspects of the personality, while Freud's included both positive and negative aspects.
Okay, so the question again, what is a key difference between Jung's collective unconscious and Freud's unconscious?
The correct answer is B. Jung's collective unconscious is a universal layer of the psyche containing archetypes, while Freud's unconscious is mainly a repository of repressed personal desires and traumas.
Right. To reiterate that, Jung theorized this deeper layer of the unconscious shared by all humanity, containing these universal patterns or archetypes, whereas Freud really focused more on the individual's repressed experiences and desires.
Okay, question number 2. Which of the following is an example of the archetype known as the shadow? A. A person who is always cheerful and optimistic, even in difficult situations. B. A person who consistently projects their own feelings of inadequacy onto others, criticizing their competence. C. A person who carefully manages their social image to be well-liked and accepted. D. A person who has fully integrated all aspects of their personality, both positive and negative.
The question again, which is an example of the shadow archetype?
The correct answer is B. A person who consistently projects their own feelings of inadequacy onto others, criticizing their competence.
Exactly. The shadow archetype represents those repressed or disowned aspects of the self, often including negative traits we then project onto others. So, for instance, a counselor who maybe struggles with their own self-doubt might unconsciously be overly critical of a client's perceived lack of progress. That's a projection.
Got it. Question number 3. The lifelong psychological process of integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of the psyche, ultimately leading to a sense of wholeness, is known as A. Repression, B. Sublimation, C. Individuation, D. Identification.
Okay, what is that lifelong process of integration called?
The correct answer is C. Individuation.
Yes. This is that central concept in Jungian psychology referring to the journey toward becoming one's true self through integrating all aspects of the personality. Think of it as moving from a fragmented sense of self towards a more complete and unified whole.
Okay, number 4. What is a key difference in how Jung and Freud viewed dreams? A. Jung believed dreams primarily serve the function of wish fulfillment, while Freud saw them as messages from the unconscious. B. Freud focused on the symbolic meaning of dreams related to repressed sexual urges, while Jung saw dreams as compensatory messages revealing neglected aspects of the self and containing archetypal themes. C. Jung believed dreams were random neurological firings with no psychological significance, while Freud saw them as a royal road to the unconscious. D. Freud emphasized the importance of the dreamer's personal associations with dream elements, while Jung focused solely on universal archetypal symbols.
So the key difference in how Jung and Freud viewed dreams.
The correct answer is B. Freud focused on the symbolic meaning of dreams related to repressed sexual urges, while Jung saw dreams as compensatory messages, revealing neglected aspects of the self and containing archetypal themes.
Right. So while both valued dreams as a window into the unconscious, their interpretations differed pretty significantly in their focus wish fulfillment versus compensation and archetypes.
Makes sense. Question 5. Carl Jung's work is often seen as a foundational influence on which of the following therapeutic approaches? A. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. B. Dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. C. Transpersonal therapy. D. Brief solution-focused therapy.
Jung's work influenced which approach?
The correct answer is C. Transpersonal therapy.
Yeah, Jung's emphasis on spirituality, archetypes, the transcendent self. It makes his work a major foundation for transpersonal psychology and therapy, which often explores higher states of consciousness and spiritual growth.
Okay, question number 6. In Jungian psychology, the inner feminine side of a man is known as the C, and the inner masculine side of a woman is known as the cheer shadow persona. B. Animus anima. C. Persona shadow. D. Anima, animus.
The inner feminine in man and inner masculine in woman are called.
The correct answer is D. Anima, animus.
Correct. Just to clarify, the anima represents those inner feminine qualities in men, maybe like intuition, emotionality, and the animus represents the inner masculine qualities in women, maybe like assertiveness or logic.
Right. Question 7. Which of the following best describes the archetype of the self in Jungian psychology? A. The social mask we wear to fit in and be accepted by others. B. The repressed and unconscious aspects of our personality. C. The archetype of wholeness and the integration of all parts of the psyche. D. The inner opposite gender qualities within an individual.
What best describes the archetype of the self?
The correct answer is C. The archetype of wholeness and the integration of all parts of the psyche.
The self represents that ultimate goal of individuation, embodying unity and completeness of the individual's whole psychological landscape.
Okay, question 8. According to Jung, an introverted individual is primarily oriented toward A. The external world and social interaction. B. Their inner world of thoughts, feelings, and reflections. C. Practical and concrete experiences. D. Logical analysis and objective reasoning.
An introverted individual is oriented toward.
The correct answer is B. Their inner world of thoughts, feelings, and reflections.
Yep. Introversion, in Jung's typology, is characterized by a primary focus on the internal psychological landscape. They find energy and stimulation more from within.
Question number 9. The social mask we develop to present ourselves to the world and navigate social expectations is known as the A. Shadow, B. Anima, C. Persona, D.
Self.
What is that social mask called?
The correct answer is C. Persona.
Right. This is that outward-facing aspect of our personality that we consciously present to others, often adapting it to different social contexts.
And finally, question number 10. A client in therapy consistently criticizes others for being dishonest. From a Jungian perspective, this behavior might be understood as an example of A. Rationalization, B. Displacement, C. Projection of the shadow, D. Sublimation.
Okay, criticizing others for dishonesty might be an example of.
The correct answer is C. Projection of the shadow.
Yeah. Criticizing others for dishonesty could be a way the client is unconsciously projecting their own dishonest tendencies onto others. It's a way of kind of externalizing a quality they find unacceptable within themselves. Excellent engagement with those questions. Hopefully that helps solidify some of the core Jungian concepts we've been exploring today.
Yeah, it's all a valuable part of the preparation process, isn't it? Deepening your understanding and helping you connect these theoretical ideas to practical applications in counseling.
Absolutely. And just a final reminder, if you'd like to explore these topics further and connect with others who are also preparing for the NCE, we definitely encourage you to join the NCE Study group. You can find more info and join by emailing ncstudyguide@gmail.com. That's ncstudyguide@gmail.com.
And connecting with a supportive community like that can offer really valuable additional perspectives and encouragement as you navigate your journey toward becoming a counselor.
So true. So as you continue on your path toward becoming a counselor, remember that journey of self-discovery and understanding. It's just as important as mastering the theoretical concepts. And on that note, let's revisit that initial Jung quote one last time. He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be. As you move forward in your career, maybe continue to reflect on the masks that we all, including yourself and your future clients, might wear. And always remain curious about the deeper realities that lie beneath the surface.
That's a really important and insightful thought to carry with you. Yeah. The journey of a counselor is also this continuous journey of self-awareness and understanding the complexities of the human psyche.
Well said. And hey, if you found this deep dive helpful in your NCE preparation, we would be incredibly grateful if you would consider leaving the NCE Study Guide podcast a 5-star rating. It really helps others who are also preparing to find this resource. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.
2, 3.